Hello, it's Peter Merrick, and I'm with Stephen Green Spiegel. This firm is the largest boutique immigration firm in Canada. Actually, it invented immigration law. And why do I say that? Mendel Green in 1962 was one of 3 lawyers in Canada, all of Canada, that practiced immigration law. And today we're going to be speaking with Stephen. And I'm going to ask Stephen, why is Canada the place? Because Stephen goes across the world, the globe, selling Canada. And you got a really big sell now because they want 500,000 immigrants a year. That's more than any time in Canadian history that they've ever had that amount. Maybe the equivalent was when Laurier was in power, when they brought in like 400,000 or 500,000 immigrants a year. So Stephen, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Great to speak to you today. Why Canada? I guess, people always ask me because I travel a lot. I go to countries all over the world selling Canada and telling people how great Canada is. But everyone says to me, Stephen, what's your favorite place in the world? And I say to them, every place in the world has something special to offer. San Diego has something special to offer. Panama has something special to offer. But what we offer in Canada really is a way of life, a family life. That's what's unique about us. There's time for business and there's times for family. And our middle class is huge. So it's great in that way. In Toronto, where I'm from, 52% of the Canadians that live here weren't born here. We are so diverse and we've learned from everyone's culture. And that's what's so unique about us. It's not come to Canada and become a Canadian. It's come to Canada and teach all the Canadians about your specialness from where you are from.
Well, one of the things that makes me a proud Canadian, because I'm also from Toronto, I'm not living there, is a lot of people have come to Canada for a better life. For my family, we got life because my family came in the 30s. And if they didn't come, you and I wouldn't be having this discussion right now. So Canada is governed by laws. So just share with me some of the great experiences you've had by practicing immigration law and a little about your practice.
Sure. I mean, the nice thing about immigration law as opposed to many other areas of the law is that you really are dealing with families. And you see the way in which Canada is able to change, just like you talked about, someone's life. Imagine coming from a country like Iran, where things are so difficult and we're seeing every single day in the paper and in the news what's going on, and you arrive here in Canada and you have the right to vote freely and privately. You can go to any school you want. We change people's lives. And I'll tell you, I go to citizenship ceremonies for many of my clients, and you see the tears that people express when they become a Canadian citizen. And you'll ask them, what are the 2 most, celebrated days of their life? They'll say, my birthday and when I became a Canadian.
And it is like having that passport. I have pride as a Canadian, and I didn't make the choice. My grandparents made the choice. I'm a beneficiary. So to see that must be like incredible, because, as a rich kid doesn't really appreciate what their parents did to give them their lifestyles. And that's what every Canadian born in Canada is.
Yeah. It's interesting too, that unlike so many other countries around the world that does have some type of immigration or mobility program, they look at the person's nationality. In Canada, we don't. We treat everyone the same. So if you're coming from the United States of America to immigrate, or you're coming from Greece to immigrate, we treat you the same. Everyone is treated the same. And that's what draws people to this great country.
Well, let's talk about the point system, because I found that very interesting.
If they can't fall in love with one of us Canadians, then there's really very few systems that you can use. One is the point system that I can talk about in a sec. And then the other one is this sort of startup visa program, the point system. About 7, 8 years ago, we had a system where you expressed to the government you did a job that was on this list of about 1,800 occupations. If you did that job, they looked at your age, education, work history, all those things. And if you got the right amount of points, you could apply for immigration, but it was taking way too long. In the countries where the influx was great, like India, China, you could wait up to 7 years to get your immigration. And immigration really looks at the ability to become economically established and how you will help Canada. Well, waiting for someone 7 years is not going to help Canada. So we closed that program. And then what we did was we invented a program that said, tell us you're interested in coming to Canada. Tell us about yourself, your age, education. Do you have family? Did you study in Canada? Did you work in Canada? Do you have any Canadian work experience? And you go into a pool. And every 2 to 3 weeks, the government looks in this pool and decides, I want to take 4,000 people this week. And they say, okay, the points have to be this high, and they invite you. And at the beginning, before COVID, you would get your immigration in about 6 months. Now it's slower and they're trying to make it better, but that was the point system. And it's based on the human capital model. What can you bring to Canada that will help the Canadian economy? It's based on work, that type of idea.
And I think that's something that a lot of countries don't have. I want to share with you a story, and this says it all about Canada. I had a friend, he's in a level marketing company. And he located in Toronto. Now he's got 120,000 people in his network. Now this company, it's very big now. It started maybe 20 years ago. Every time they opened up in a new market, he had an entire network because the entire world was in Toronto. Everybody has somebody who is immigrated to Canada. Like how many ethnic groups are in Toronto? I'm just because Toronto's probably the most diverse city. I think there's like 160.
Everything in the world's here. Everything in the world's here. Food is great. It was funny. I helped a client who had a huge convention here in Toronto, and they have them all over the world. And last one was in Texas. And then we had a debriefing after. How did it go? And they said, oh, we love Toronto. I said, what was so good about it? He said, the food. When we were down in Texas, we all had a choice of steak, and we have people from all over the world so they could eat at Indian restaurants, Japanese restaurants, Portuguese restaurants, just everything. So our food is great for sure.
So you were mentioning about this startup category that's just been introduced.
Sure. So it's a great business program. And what happened was Canada looked around the world and saw what was going on in Silicon Valley, saw what was going on in Bangalore, India, what was going on in Israel with all these cool, innovative startups. And they said, why don't we encourage these types of businesses to establish in Canada? So they created a startup visa program, which brings innovation to Canada and really puts us on the world stage. I mean, because of these programs, we perhaps in Toronto now are one of the best artificial intelligence places in the world because we are promoting high-tech technology through this great immigration program. It's a great program. High net worth people too, Peter. Like if you're a high net worth person, you can be sort of a mentor to one of these founders that are coming. Bring your wealth, bring your knowledge, bring your experience to help these founders expand, because a lot of the founders really don't have the business expertise that they need.
So, Stephen, where do these people usually locate when you bring them, when they say they're going to take advantage of it? Do they go to Waterloo, or they're coming to Toronto?
They're going everywhere, but there's lots of interesting issues with respect to where can they get the best resources. They like Toronto, for example, because we have 5 universities here. So they've got all these engineering students coming. Then they like the Waterloo corridor. It's close to Toronto, and they can draw on the University of Waterloo. Out in British Columbia, they've got universities. So a lot of the big centers provide them with the workers that they need to have these businesses expand, and the knowledge, and the universities. They all work together.
So I have a question. I remember reading years ago that the United States was not as encouraging for expertise in their immigration. So a lot of people were foreign students who were graduating from American universities, and they were like tech professionals, and Canada was welcoming them. Like I remember Microsoft was opening up an office just north of Seattle in the Vancouver area for that very reason, to get access to that talent
Exactly.
who would leave otherwise. It would leave North America forever.
Yep. Unlike a lot of countries, Canada has a special program called the Global Skills Strategy, and that targets 20 IT occupations where you can get a work permit to Canada, depending on your nationality, as quick as 1 day, or the government hits a target of 10 days for the longer one. So can you imagine if you are in the United States as a student, you graduate, you've done some training, and a Canadian company wants you, you can have an expedited work permit if you work in the IT industry, again, concentrating on technology and bringing this resource to Canada.
So what are the professions right now that the government of Canada says we need, that you're seeing now?
A great question, Peter, because remember I talked about this pool system, and you look in it and the government decides, how many they're going to take, and they just look at the points. But now we're changing that system. What are we doing? Well, you've heard all over the world there's a shortage in the medical area, where there's a shortage in the engineering area. So the government's saying now we're going to look in that pool, but now we're going to concentrate not just on the points, but what type of sector are you in? Are you in the medical area? Wow, you're a pharmacist, you're a nurse, you're an occupational therapist. So those people will be given advantages. So we really, in my opinion, have one of the best immigration systems in the world. And unlike so many other countries where you've got one political party doesn't like immigration, another one loves immigration, not in Canada. All three of our major political parties understand the importance of it, promote it, and want it.
Well, Canada needs immigrants because it's an older population. Like if Canada didn't bring in immigrants, there'd be no Canadians. I was reading by like 2350.
Yeah. Well, we're the second largest landmass of country, and our population is only 37 million. So we either got to start having more babies, or immigration's got to help us.
Share with me some great stories, like success stories, because you've been like, since 1988, right? You've been practicing. So that's, what is that? That would be is that 34 years? They're almost 35
something
years.
Like that. Yep. I mean, Peter, we have so many wonderful stories of immigrants that have come here and created amazing businesses. We had someone come on the startup visa program, and he was providing some tutoring to kids in Canada, but the people that were assisting in the tutoring were all over the world, and they were charging so little because of the exchange rate and helping so many students. We have people here that come and open up branches of their businesses, expand. We have professors that come here, humanitarians that come here. I mean, it's so welcoming, in my opinion. We just have such beautiful stories where we change people's lives. It's an unbelievable feeling. And people ask me, Stephen, you're a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. You're miserable. You have stress. I said, I don't even consider it a job. To me, it's just a wonderful way to fulfill my needs of helping people.
I'm going to ask you a question, because I don't know if you guys have ever sat down, because on your website, you say 60 years. Well, how many individuals has Green Spiegel helped become Canadians in those 60 years?
I don't know, but definitely we have helped the most of anybody. And, we're asked that, what country do people mostly come from? I said, come from everywhere. And we have helped so many. It's so interesting because when email became the way of communication, and immigration communicates with us on behalf of our clients, sometimes they like to do surveys, and the only email they have is mine. And oh my God, the amount of just thousands of emails I get, because these were people that we'd helped in the past.
So I have a question then. I'm someone who wants to come to Canada. What would be the first steps that I should do?
I think, first of all, you have to explore and see, where do you want to live? What do you like about Canada? Then, once you've made a determination, I want to come to Canada, depending on your net worth, you go speak to a tax person. Because to me, I would be irresponsible to help a high net worth individual who hasn't had tax advice first. Then once they're satisfied about Canada they want to move to, they're satisfied with respect to their tax situation, then they can contact us. We're happy to help them. They can do some more exploratory investigation on the immigration system, the government website. They can look at it, see the various categories, things like that. But that's what I would do if it was me.
And then they determine I want to come to Canada. So what's the process if they then choose to go to your firm? What would happen at that point once they engage you, or how do they engage your firm?
Sure, we would evaluate their background and find the best pathway for them to come. Once we've determined the pathway, then we would work with them to prepare their application for immigration and follow them through the whole system until the day they become an immigrant in Canada. And then we work with them for the next 3 years to facilitate them getting their Canadian passport.
Right. And do you also help, let's say people are coming from the United States, to announce their citizenship as well?
Sure. I mean, look, people desire certain immigration processes from various countries, certain passports. And if people want to renounce even their Canadian citizenship, we can help them. They want to renounce their American citizenship, we help them. But again, we make sure they understand this is a big step in their life, and they're clear they want to do it. Then absolutely, we can help them do that.
So I met a few people who turned to your father when he was practicing as their trusted advisor, because he was the first one to bring them to Canada. A lot of them brought their children there while they worked somewhere else. Your father became like the family member. He became like the uncle in Canada. So what services do you provide for people who, more than just immigration, what other services that are auxiliary, which are important? Let's say in the old day with the investor program, someone might buy a mall or something like that to satisfy their business.
It's an great question. Remember that when we have clients, our law firm is very different compared to other firms that may be doing the corporate work. Like, I'm dealing with the family, and I'm dealing with the dog, and I'm dealing with, I want to put my son or daughter in school, or I want to buy a house. I need a family doctor. So it really, you sort of become part of the Green and Spiegel family when you retain us to work with you. But again, I understand how each area is, specialized in the sense that I would never touch tax. So I would refer you to someone who I feel is as good in tax as I am in immigration. You need a corporate lawyer, I send you a corporate lawyer. A family lawyer. You want to buy a house, I'll find you an agent that I believe is as professional as I am. So again, there's lots of people out there, but it's so important the network you have to reach out to people that that can help your clients and respect the needs of your clients. And that is so important, I think.
They have a whole life, but you're the gateway.
Yep. I'm a huge, friends of mine tell me all the time, Stephen, you're a huge referral, because Peter, if you arrived in Canada, you'd say, okay, Stephen, I need a car, I need this, I need that, I need that. So I have to make sure that my clients are taken care of. And I say, go see this person, go see that person. And they will always give, hopefully my clients the best possible service and advice that they need.
Excellent. So what do you think the future is for Canada?
I think the future for Canada is pretty darn good. We got to get our climate under control a bit, our pollution under control a bit, like everybody. But, I just think, this pandemic really opened up people's eyes to the concept that work isn't everything and family is very important. And I think that people are saying now, I want to find a place that's great for my family. And that's what this country is all about. A great balance between business and family and success. And what you can only get success if you have a great balance between family and your work.
Well, I definitely miss that tunnel system. For those who don't know, Toronto has the largest indoor shopping mall. You guys are 390 Bay, right?
Yeah, well, we used to be. We used to be, but no, we don't have the biggest indoor mall now. Now it's moved to Edmonton. Those guys have the biggest one, I think.
Actually, if you put
the walkway, yes, but Peter,
yes.
You're absolutely what you're talking. Correct. We have
Toronto's got the biggest mall in the world, and
right.
This is such a Canadian thing. We don't take ownership of it.
Yeah,
Toronto
you're
is
right.
But
it's a mall in the sense. It's the sense of we have, because I guess we have people coming from all over the world, and some of them come from climates that are 35, 40, and when they get exposed to our lovely December, January temperatures, they don't want to go outside. So what do they do in Toronto? They built an underground city. So you can walk for miles and miles of shops, restaurants, everything underground. It's great.
It is a fantastic city. I want to thank you so much, Stephen. This has been very helpful. I am a proud Canadian. I live in the States. I'll never become American. My wife says it all the time, but my expertise was tax. So I'm counting my days to see how long I'm going to keep my green card, because as soon as 7 years happens, I have to make some serious decisions.
Great.
But Canada, the one great thing that I take pride in as a Canadian, once you leave Canada, you're a Canadian. You don't have Revenue Canada chasing you like the US IRS will. And Canada understands that they have to be governed by laws and fair with the people. And for small business, and this is something that I find incredible, it has the lowest tax rate for businesses that earn less than $500,000 a year. You're paying about 11% tax. You can't beat that. In California, it's 28%. In places like Texas and Florida, it's still 21%. Can't beat this. Yeah. Stephen, you've been wonderful, and I want to thank you so much. And I would recommend that you look at what's next to Stephen right now, is because it's the website, and you can go and check it out and find your pathway to becoming a Canadian. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thanks, Peter.
And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And I find this all the time. I sit down with business owners all the time, and they always give me unsolicited advice because they want to share their knowledge, and it's really important.
Here with me is Peter Merrick,
president of merrickwealth.com.
Peter is an income and capital enhancement consultant,
speaker and author.
He is also a
recognized expert in the world of succession planning.
Over 800 published articles and 3 industry textbooks.
He's a Canadian who joins us today from San Diego, California. Thanks for joining us.
So, Peter Merrick, tell us about you.
Well, I've been in the financial service industry since the end of 1991.
I graduated during the recession. The baby boomers were in their positions, so there was no jobs. So the two businesses that opened up were the technology field and the financial field. It was the Wild West in both of them. So I had this brilliant idea, and I had a friend of mine, and we started talking, and I said, hey, how difficult would it be for us to get a mutual fund dealer license? Not difficult enough. Thank God for those 10 years, the market just went up. I would sit down and I would take somebody's entire life savings that they spent 15, 20 years accumulating it, this young kid who knew nothing about nothing, and I would go and just invest it, and luckily it went up because the markets were crazy in the 90s. It was a boom time.
But in 2004, my life blew up.
I almost went bankrupt, but I was very fortunate because there were very few CFPs at the time, but every university in Canada wanted to offer the CFP program. So I got recruited as a prof. And it was great. I was reading all the textbooks. I would call all the big publishers. And what I came to the conclusion was the succession planning was missing.
One of the issues is there was very little talking beyond the accumulation stage. Like, how do you have a healthy life after you've done that?
I also looked at demographics. At the turn of the 20th century, the average life expectancy in the West and North America was 43 years old. And people are dying at 83. No one ever lived to 83.
Well, so I always say that there's two financial plans. There's the financial one that we work on, and there's what you get to do with all your time and that energy once you're done. And with this thing that they've been racing towards, they've hit it. But if they haven't thought about what they're going to do after or how they're going to feel validation for their existence, they just never stop. They just keep going.
Well, it's not anybody's fault, because when people are young, they focus too much on doing, and later on in life, they have to focus on being.
So I wrote my own textbooks because
I thought it was very important to talk about how do you transition from the first half of life, which Carl Jung called it the mourning, where you're accumulating, whether it's your ego, designations, education, houses.
The second half is deconstruction, giving wisdom away, giving away my money, giving away my time, leaving a legacy.
So talk to me about that stage. What's the purposeful way or kind of the best practices, ways, or considerations for people to take when transitioning into that stage of life?
Well, one, decide whether or not you want an exit. I find between the ages of 55 and 70, a lot of people feel that I'm just tired doing the same thing that I've always done, and I have the money now. So maybe I should get out when the going is good and pass on my business to someone who's got the energy to navigate it. Number two, who are you going to sell your business to? There's one issue about selling it to a family member or an employee. What happens after you sell it? Things don't go right. A lot of business owners want to sell their business because they just want to wash their hands. But by selling it to someone you know, you're not getting out of your business. The best is to sell to a third-party purchaser. The last one is after they make that transition from being a business owner, building a nest egg for themselves to have choice, they don't know what they're going to do. I've spoken to people who say, I'm going to take up golf. So my question is, do you golf now? I don't golf now. So what makes you think you're going to golf later? I just want to share with you guys a story.
There was a gentleman, his name was Bob Hunter. He was quite a celebrity. He started Greenpeace during the height of my blow up. When I was going through business loss, he was bringing me on national television. And you know what he was doing? He was saying, so Peter, don't you do that? And then he would give my phone number and he would give my web address. The reason why it went by merrickwealth.com, because it was almost like a phone number that would run across the television, and I could actually see myself making money off of it. And he was dying. He had prostate cancer. And he turned to me and said, Peter, one day you will be in a position that you'll help someone else. And let me share with you about the legacy. Bob's been dead for 16 years. And I'm sharing you the legacy of Bob Hunter because he made a difference for me. And if I make a difference in anyone else's life, I'm a product of those people who are willing to do things and they had no expectations. And a true mentor is someone who has no expectations that they're going to see the tree blossom.
The reason I wrote The King of Main Street is younger people don't know how to find the right mentors, and older people have this need to mentor. It's almost like a biological need because they can see beyond their physical existence. They know that the sun was here before them and it will be after them, and what's going to be left behind that they leave.
I would joke, I can't make you money, but I can definitely save you money. What I mean by that is I am a Sherpa. That's someone who would guide someone to help them come down. But I realize the most precious asset they have is not their money. It's their time.
What last piece of advice would you like to give our listeners?
If you have a business, the most important thing to ask yourself is, why did you get into the business? And it's usually not to create a legacy, it's to create the lifestyle that you want. And at that point, ask yourself, what do you want to do during your last days.
The last human freedom is to choose one's own beliefs, one's own way. Everything else you can have taken away from you. But what you believe and how you choose to act in the world, that is yours.
And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And that is going to give you fulfillment emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. You guys have been wonderful, and I want to thank you, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.